Your Honor, I'm the mayor. Drop this, and your budget stays safe.
I have been sitting on this bench for over 2 decades, and you think you have seen every kind of arrogance that walks through those doors. You have seen street thugs who think aggression can intimidate justice. You have seen wealthy children who think their parents' credit cards are a shield against reality. But every once in a while, a different kind of arrogance appears, a more dangerous kind, wrapped in bespoke suits, firm handshakes, and smiles practiced for the camera. It is the arrogance of political power. Or rather, the delusion that because you were elected to write the laws, those laws simply do not apply to you. Let me tell you about the morning Mayor Richard Sterling walked into my courtroom, the most powerful man in this city, the man who holds the keys to City Hall, and a man who believes justice is a tool for him to wield, not a scale he must face. He wasn't here for corruption or bribery. Those charges are usually handled quietly behind closed doors. No, he was here for a reason that would make any ordinary citizen shudder. Obstructing emergency services and misuse of public property. Specifically, he parked his armored SUV directly across the only exit of fire station number 4 for 45 minutes. Not for an emergency, but because he wanted to stop at the coffee shop across the street for a PR photo op for his re-election campaign. In those 45 minutes, a fire truck was actively blocked while sirens were blaring. Firefighters lost precious time maneuvering around the mayor's vehicle, but Richard Sterling didn't accept that ticket with shame. Oh, no. He did something that only those who believe they are little kings would dare to do. He demanded the police chief tear up the ticket. And when the chief refused, a brave man days away from retirement, Sterling decided to come to court himself, not to defend his actions, but to teach me and the judicial system a lesson about hierarchy. That morning, Richard Sterling didn't walk in as a defendant. He walked in as if this were a campaign press conference. 9 a.m., sharp, the doors swung open. He appeared in a perfect navy blue suit, the flag pin on his lapel gleaming under the fluorescent lights. Trailing behind him were not lawyers, but 2 assistants carrying briefcases and smartphones. He didn't look at the officer who wrote him the ticket. He didn't look at the regular citizens waiting for their turn, the people he calls voters only when he needs a ballot cast. He walked straight to the defense table, but instead of sitting down, he stood there, nodding at me, as if we were old friends, meeting at the golf club. I looked down at him from the bench, a handsome, trustworthy face, the kind designed for billboards, but the eyes were ice cold. That wasn't a look of respect for the court. That was the look of a man wondering how to make this minor nuisance disappear as quickly as possible. Richard James Sterling, the clerk called out, her voice trembling slightly. He adjusted his cufflink and flashed that trademark smile at the clerk. Present, Your Honor. His voice rang out, deep and commanding, the very voice that won him 2 consecutive terms. And before we proceed, I wish to note for the record that I will be representing myself. I believe this is merely a misunderstanding of administrative protocol between government agencies. I looked down at the file. Obstruction of emergency vehicles. Illegal parking in an emergency zone. Mr. Sterling, I said, keeping my voice flat. You are accused of blocking a fire truck on an active call just to buy coffee. How do you plead? Guilty or not guilty? Mayor Sterling let out a soft chuckle, a dry sound that implied my question was absurd. Your Honor, the concept of guilt here is an oversimplification. I do not deny my vehicle was in that position. However, I deny the illegal nature of that action. Therefore, I plead not guilty. I have seen many people try to find loopholes, but the way he spoke as if he were granting me a favor by simply being here sucked the air right out of the room. You are saying that blocking a fire truck from saving lives is legal? I asked, trying to mask the contempt in my voice. I am saying that Sterling interrupted me, a fatal mistake in my courtroom, that as mayor, I possess executive privilege. At that moment, I was conducting vital public business, and according to the city charter, Section 12, subsection B, the chief executive of the city is exempt from standard traffic regulations while in the performance of official duties. He began opening his briefcase, not to pull out evidence, but to pull out an attitude of superiority. He didn't say a single word about safety, not a single apology to those firefighters. just privilege, statutes, and arrogance. He thought the title mayor was a get-out-of-jail-free card. Executive privilege, I repeated, letting the words hang in the air like a bad smell. And Section 12, subsection B, I leaned forward, clasping my hands together on the polished wood of the bench. The gallery was silent. They knew, even if the mayor didn't, that when I get quiet, it isn't because I am intimidated. It is because I am loading the gun. Mr. Sterling, I began, my voice dropping to a register that vibrated through the microphone. I know the city charter very well. I helped draft the amendments to it 10 years ago. Subsection B allows for traffic exemptions during declared states of emergency or active pursuit of public safety. It does not mention caffeine procurement. A ripple of suppressed laughter went through the courtroom, quickly silenced by a sharp glare from the mayor's assistants. Sterling didn't laugh. His jaw tightened, the first crack in his polished veneer. You simplify the burden of leadership, Judge Sterling said, his tone sharpening, shedding the fake friendliness. My schedule is tighter than a drum. I had a critical, impromptu meeting with a potential investor for the downtown revitalization project. That coffee shop was the only neutral ground available on short notice. Securing millions for this city is an official duty. If I have to part creatively to make that happen, the city should be thanking me, not ticketing me. Creatively, I echoed. You blocked a fire station. A truck engine 4 was delayed by 3 minutes responding to a cardiac arrest call because your driver refused to move the vehicle until you had your drink. Did you know that? Sterling waved a hand dismissively. The fire truck got out. The patient survived. No harm, no foul. This is a waste of taxpayer money, dragging the mayor into court over a matter of inches and minutes. He was doing it again, minimizing, calculating. To him, the risk to human life was just a line item in a cost-benefit analysis. It is not a matter of inches, Mr. Mayor. It is a matter of law. And in this room, you are not the mayor. You are a citizen, and citizens do not get to decide which laws are inconvenient enough to ignore. Sterling's eyes narrowed. He took a step closer to the bench, invading the buffer zone, usually reserved for attorneys. It was a power move, designed to dominate the physical space. Let's be careful, Judge Boyd, he said, his voice low, almost a growl. We are both public servants. We both serve the city. But let's not forget who signs the judiciary budget requests at the end of the fiscal year. Let's not forget who appoints the committee that reviews judicial conduct. I am trying to be reasonable here. I am trying to save us both the embarrassment of a public spectacle. Dismiss this citation based on executive discretion, and we can both go back to doing our jobs. The threat wasn't even veiled. It was naked. He was threatening my career, my funding, right here on the record. He thought he was whispering, but the microphones picked up every syllable. I looked at the court reporter. She had stopped typing, her eyes wide with shock. Keep typing, Miss Evans, I said calmly. I want every word of that on the transcript. I turned back to Sterling. He looked surprised that I hadn't flinched. Did you just threaten this court, Mr. Sterling? I am stating facts, Sterling replied, smoothing his tie, trying to regain his composure. Political reality is a fact. You can be an idealist, Boyd, or you can be a realist. The realist knows that ticketing the mayor for a parking violation is career suicide. I see, I said. So your defense is twofold. First, that you were on an official mission to meet an investor. And second, that you are too powerful to be punished even if you weren't. I stand by the official mission, Sterling said, realizing he might have pushed too far with the threat. The investor meeting was real. It was sensitive. It was vital for the city's economy. That is the justification for the stop. The rest is just context. A sensitive investor meeting, I mused, in a public coffee shop with no security detail inside. And who was this investor? Surely, if this meeting was so critical that it justified endangering the public, you can name the party involved. Sterling hesitated. Just for a second, his eyes darted to the left, a classic tell. Confidentiality agreements prevent me from naming the individual at this stage, he said smoothly. But I assure you, the meeting took place. You assure me, I said. just like you assured the voters that the new stadium wouldn't cost them a dime. Objection, Sterling shouted, forgetting he was his own lawyer. Relevance, overruled, I said. Credibility is always relevant. You claim you were working. The officer claims you were just getting a latte. It's your word against his. Unless I paused. I let the silence stretch until Sterling shifted his weight uncomfortably. Unless there is a record, I said softly. You see, Mr. Mayor, you are a man of the digital age. You live on your phone. Your assistants live on their phones. And official meetings usually leave a paper trail. Or, in 2024, a digital one. Sterling looked confused, a flicker of doubt entering his eyes. I told you, it was an impromptu verbal discussion. There are no minutes. Maybe not minutes, I said, but you communicate with your staff constantly, don't you? You micromanage. That is your reputation. I picked up a piece of paper from my desk. It wasn't the ticket. It was a document I had requested an hour before court started, based on a tip from the very police chief Sterling had tried to bully. You see, Mr. Mayor, when you demanded the chief tear up your ticket, you didn't just call him. You sent him an email to follow up, didn't you? A furious email at 9:15 a.m. this morning, sent from your secure government BlackBerry, detailing exactly why you were angry and why the ticket should be voided. Sterling's face went pale. He remembered the email, but he didn't know I had it. I communicate with my department heads frequently, he stammered, his voice losing its depth. And in that email, I continued, holding the paper up to the light. Did you mention the investor? Did you mention the downtown project? Because if you did, that would support your claim of official business. I don't recall the exact phrasing, he said, sweat starting to form on his brow. I do, I said, because I have it right here. I put on my reading glasses, taking my time. The silence in the courtroom was heavy, the kind of silence that happens right before a storm breaks. Sterling stood frozen, his hand halfway to his tie, his eyes locked on the piece of paper in my hand. He was mentally scrambling, trying to remember exactly what he had written in a fit of rage 3 hours ago. Let's read this together, shall we? I said, my voice projecting clearly to the back of the room. Sent today 9:15 a.m. from Mayor R. Sterling to Chief of Police. Subject, insubordination by Officer Miller. I looked up over my glasses. So far, no mention of an investor. But let's continue. I began to read the body of the email. Chief, you need to handle your dogs. I stopped at the cafe for literally 10 minutes to pick up the catering order for my wife's garden party before heading to the country club for my tea time. This rookie, Miller, had the audacity to ticket the beast while the engine was still running. I don't care what the protocol is. I don't have time for this nonsense. Kill the ticket and reassign Miller to parking enforcement in the outer districts. I want this gone by lunch. I lowered the paper. The court reporter stopped typing, her mouth slightly open. The gallery murmured. The critical investor meeting for the downtown revitalization project had just evaporated. So, I said, placing the email gently on the bench next to the ticket, let me recap. You weren't meeting an investor. You weren't securing millions for the city. You were picking up catering for a garden party and then heading to play golf. Sterling's face flushed a deep, angry red. The cool, collected politician was gone. In his place was a man who had been caught in a lie and was now desperate to spin his way out of it. Your Honor, you are taking this out of context, Sterling stammered, his voice rising in pitch. The garden party is a networking event. Important people attend. It is work. And the golf game? That was with the investor. Business happens on the golf course, Judge. You know that. I used shorthand in the email because I was in a rush. I didn't think I had to explain the nuances of high-level networking to the police chief. You didn't use shorthand, Mr. Mayor. I cut him off. You used specifics. You said my wife's garden party. That is a personal event. You said heading to the club for my tea time. You didn't say heading to a meeting. And most importantly, you ordered the chief of police to punish an officer for doing his job because it ruined your morning mood. I leaned back, crossing my arms. But let's put the abuse of power aside for a second. Let's focus on what just happened in this courtroom. 2 minutes ago, You stood there, under oath, and told me you were on a vital official mission involving sensitive economic data. You lied to me. You lied to this court. You fabricated a story to justify endangering public safety. I did not lie, Sterling shouted, slamming his hand on the defense table. The sound echoed like a gunshot. I interpreted the events through the lens of my duties. Everything I do is for this city. My relaxation is for the city. My networking is for the city. You cannot separate the man from the office. I can, I said coldly. And I just did. The law separates the man from the office. The man wanted pastries and golf. The office requires integrity. You sacrificed the latter for the former. I turned to the bailiff. Secure this email as Exhibit B. And officer, make sure the door is secured. Mr. Sterling is not leaving just yet. Sterling looked at the bailiff, then back at me. Panic was starting to set in. Real, visceral panic. Am I under arrest? He asked, his voice losing its bluster. For a parking ticket? No, I said. You are not under arrest for a parking ticket. You are currently being detained for contempt of court and perjury, but we aren't done with the parking ticket yet. You see, you claimed no harm, no foul. You claimed the fire truck got out and the patient survived, so it didn't matter. I picked up another file from my desk. I want to address that claim because when you play with the lives of my citizens, close enough doesn't count. I demand to speak to my legal counsel, Sterling said, pulling out his phone. I am done representing myself. This is a trap. You waived your right to counsel at the start of this arraignment, I reminded him. You wanted to teach me a lesson, remember? You can call your lawyer when we are finished. But right now, you are going to listen. I pointed to the doors at the back of the courtroom. You said the delay was irrelevant. You said it was a matter of inches. I think there is someone here who would disagree with your assessment of no harm. The doors opened. Sterling turned around, expecting perhaps another police officer or a clerk, but it wasn't. Walking into the courtroom was a young woman dressed in a paramedic's uniform. She looked exhausted, her eyes heavy with the weight of a long shift. She wasn't carrying a briefcase or a law book. She was holding a logbook. Paramedic Sarah Jenkins, I announced. Please approach the bench. Sterling stepped back as she walked past him. He wouldn't look at her. He couldn't. She smelled of antiseptic and smoke. She smelled like the reality he had tried to ignore from the comfort of his armored SUV. Miss Jenkins, I said softly, thank you for coming. I know you are off duty. It's okay, Your Honor, she said, her voice steady but quiet. She glanced at the mayor, then quickly looked away, as if looking at him made her sick. Miss Jenkins, were you on engine 4 this morning at 8:45 a.m.? I was, sir. I was the lead paramedic, and can you tell the court what happened when the alarm rang? She took a deep breath, clutching the logbook tighter. We got a code blue call, cardiac arrest, a 6-year-old boy, asthma attack, leading to respiratory failure. The room went dead silent. Sterling's head snapped up. A 6-year-old boy. He hadn't known that. He had assumed it was some old person or a false alarm. Go on, I said. We mounted up. Sirens on. We tried to exit the bay, she continued, her voice trembling slightly, but there was a black SUV blocking the apron. We blasted the air horn. We waited. Every second counts with a hypoxic child, Your Honor. Brain damage starts after 4 minutes without oxygen. We sat there for 3 minutes and 40 seconds before we could inch around the back on the grass, which nearly stuck the truck. 3 minutes and 40 seconds, I repeated, looking directly at Sterling. While you were waiting for your latte. Mr. Mayor, did you know a child was dying while you waited for your change? Sterling was pale now, ghostly pale. I didn't know the nature of the call. I thought it was a drill. They do drills all the time. A drill? Sarah Jenkins spoke up, her voice breaking with anger. We had the lights on. The sirens were screaming. You looked right at us, sir. I saw you in the window of the coffee shop. You looked right at the truck, checked your watch, and then turned back to the counter. You checked your watch, I repeated, the words tasting like ash in my mouth, because you were worried about your tea time. Meanwhile, Miss Jenkins was watching a clock for a very different reason. Sarah Jenkins nodded, her knuckles white as she gripped the podium. She wasn't intimidated by the mayor anymore. The anger of seeing a child suffer had burned away her fear of authority. "We got to the house 6 minutes late, Your Honor," Sarah said, her voice cracking. "The boy, his name is Leo. He was blue, no pulse. We got him back. We intubated him on the living room floor while his mother screamed in the kitchen." She paused, looking directly at Sterling. "But because of that delay, the delay caused by your SUV, Leo was without oxygen for too long. He's in the ICU right now. The doctors say he has severe hypoxic ischemic encephalopathy. Brain damage, Your Honor. If he wakes up, he might never walk again. He might never talk again, all because we couldn't get out of the driveway." The silence in the courtroom was suffocating. It wasn't just quiet, it was heavy. You could hear the hum of the air conditioning, the scratch of a pen, the terrified breathing of the mayor of this city. "Brain damage," Sterling whispered. He looked like he was going to be sick. For the first time, the reality of his arrogance had pierced through the bubble of his privilege. I didn't know. I would never. I have a nephew that age." "But you didn't ask," I said, my voice cutting through his self-pity. "You didn't ask the officer why he was writing the ticket. You didn't ask the chief if there was an emergency. You assumed your convenience was the only thing that mattered in the universe. You assumed that because you are the mayor, the world waits for you. But hypoxia doesn't wait for mayors. Physics doesn't care about your election numbers." Sterling looked up, desperation in his eyes. "I will pay for his treatment. I will set up a trust fund. I have personal wealth. I will make sure Leo gets the best care in the country. I will fix this." "You think you can write a check for a child's future?" I asked, leaning forward. "You think money fixes brain damage? That is the ultimate arrogance, Mr. Sterling. You think everything has a price tag. You traded a child's cognitive function for a scone, and now you want to buy it back?" I turned to Sarah Jenkins. "Miss Jenkins, thank you. You have done your duty today, and you did it bravely. Please, return to your work, and tell Leo's family, tell them the court is thinking of them." She nodded, wiped a tear from her cheek, and walked out. The click of the door closing felt like the final nail in Sterling's coffin. I turned my attention back to the man in the navy blue suit. He was slumped against the defense table, the confident posture gone. But I wasn't done. The parking ticket was the least of his problems now. "Mr. Sterling," I said, picking up the email exhibit B again. "We have established the harm. We have established the lie. But now we need to address the threat." Sterling looked up, confused. "The threat? 10 minutes ago," I said. "You stood there and threatened my funding. You threatened my career. You implied that if I didn't dismiss this case, you would use your political power to destroy me. You tried to weaponize the budget against the judiciary." I stood up. I rarely stand up during a hearing, but today, I needed the height. "Do you know what that is?" I asked. "That is not political reality. That is extortion. That is attempted obstruction of justice. You came into my house, the house of law, and tried to bully the landlord." Sterling held up his hands. "It was heat of the moment, Judge. I was frustrated. I didn't mean it literally. We are colleagues. We are not colleagues," I snapped. "I serve the Constitution. You serve your ego. And regarding your defense of executive privilege," I picked up a heavy law book from my desk, the city charter he had tried to quote earlier. I decided to look up Section 12, subsection B, myself, while Miss Jenkins was testifying. Do you know what it actually says? It says the mayor is exempt from traffic laws only when driving a marked city vehicle with emergency lights activated. I looked at him over the rim of the book. "Was your armored SUV flashing blue lights while you were buying pastries?" "No," Sterling whispered. "So you lied about the statute too," I said, slamming the book shut. "You lied about the meeting. You lied about the law. You threatened the court. And you maimed a child." "Right. I wasn't driving," Sterling blurted out suddenly. It was a pivot, a desperate attempt to shift blame. The survival instinct of a career politician kicking in. "My driver, Officer Miller," well, not Miller, the other one, "my detail. He parked the car. I just told him to stop. He should have known better. He is the professional driver. I am just the passenger. Technically, the citation should be on him." The gallery gasped. He was throwing his own security detail under the bus. Your driver? I asked, raising an eyebrow. The man who follows your orders? The man whose career depends on making you happy? He has a duty to follow traffic laws regardless of my instructions, Sterling argued, his voice gaining a little strength as he found a new angle. If I tell him to drive off a cliff, he shouldn't do it. He parked the car. He blocked the station. I was inside getting coffee. Legally, the operator of the vehicle is liable. I stared at him. The depths of his cowardice were truly bottomless. So now it's the driver's fault, I said. A moment ago, it was an official mission authorized by you. Now that there is a victim, it is the driver's incompetence. I pressed the intercom button on my bench. Bailiff, is Officer Griggs, the mayor's driver, still in the hallway? Yes, Your Honor, the bailiff replied. Bring him in, I ordered. Let's see if he agrees with the mayor's version of events. Sterling's eyes widened. He hadn't realized his driver was still in the building. He thought he was alone in the fight. But in my courtroom, I like to have all the players on the board. Officer Griggs stepped into the courtroom. He was a big man, built like a linebacker, but his shoulders were slumped. He wasn't wearing his usual confident stride. He walked slowly, his eyes fixed on the floor, avoiding the gaze of the man he had been sworn to protect for the last 4 years. Officer Griggs, I said, my voice cutting through the tension. Please take the stand. He moved to the witness box, his heavy boots clomping on the hardwood. He sat down, the chair creaking under his weight. He looked tired, not physically tired like the paramedic, but soul tired. The kind of exhaustion that comes from compromising your integrity one too many times. Officer, I began, skipping the pleasantries. You understand you are under oath. Yes, Your Honor, Griggs said, his voice deep and gravelly. Good, because your boss, Mayor Sterling, just made a very interesting statement to this court. He claims that the decision to park the armored SUV in front of the fire station exit was entirely yours. He claims he was merely a passenger, unaware of the specific placement of the vehicle. He claims that you, as the professional driver, bear the full legal and moral responsibility for obstructing Engine 4. Griggs's head snapped up. He looked at Sterling. The betrayal in his eyes was raw. He had taken a bullet for this man, metaphorically, and perhaps literally in his mind, and now he was being served up as the scapegoat for a PR disaster. He said that? Griggs asked, his voice tightening. He did, I confirmed. He said, you should have known better. He said he would never order a driver to break the law. Griggs let out a short, bitter laugh. He looked at the mayor, then turned his gaze to me. The loyalty that had bound him to the office of the mayor just evaporated, burned away by the heat of Sterling's cowardice. Your Honor, Griggs said, leaning into the microphone, with all due respect to the office, that is a lie. Sterling jumped up. He is protecting his pension. He is incompetent. I am going to have his badge for this. Sit down, I roared. The gavel strike was deafening. One more outburst, Mr. Sterling, and I will have you gagged. This is a courtroom, not a city council meeting. You do not control the floor here. I turned back to Griggs. Continue, officer. Tell me exactly what happened at 8:40 a.m. this morning. Griggs took a deep breath. We were heading to the country club. The mayor was agitated. He was on the phone with his campaign manager, yelling about polling numbers in the 4th district. He suddenly ordered me to pull over at the Roasted Bean Cafe. He said he needed a pick-me-up. And then I pulled up to the curb, Your Honor. But the street was full. Delivery trucks, commuters. The only open space was the yellow-painted box in front of the station doors. I told him, Sir, I can't stop here. It's a fire lane. It's the main egress. And what was his response, I asked? Griggs closed his eyes for a moment, recalling the exact words. He told me, Griggs, I am the mayor. I own the streets. Park the damn car. I'll be 5 minutes. I hesitated, Your Honor. I kept the engine running. I told him I would circle the block. He grabbed my shoulder. Griggs opened his eyes. They were hard now. He looked me right in the face and said, if you move this car 1 inch before I get my coffee, you can hand in your badge and go work security at the mall. Do you understand me? The gallery murmured. A direct threat. Quid pro quo. Do the illegal thing or lose your livelihood. So, I said, looking at Sterling, he didn't just allow it. He coerced it. He weaponized your job against your duty. I was under duress, Your Honor, Griggs said quietly. I have a mortgage. I have 2 kids in college. I parked the car. I shouldn't have. I know that now. When the fire truck started blasting the horn, I wanted to move. I really did. But he had the keys. He took the fob with him into the shop so I wouldn't get any ideas. He took the keys? I asked, stunned. So even if you wanted to move, you couldn't? That's correct, sir. The vehicle has a proximity push to start. Without the fob in the cabin, it's a brick. I sat there for 3 minutes watching those firefighters scream at me, and I couldn't do a thing. I looked at Sterling. He was shaking his head, mouthing the word liar over and over again, but the fight was draining out of him. The walls were closing in. Mr. Sterling, I said, my voice dangerously low, you took the keys. You trapped your own driver in an illegal position. You knowingly blocked an emergency vehicle, and then you came in here and blamed the man you handcuffed. He is exaggerating, Sterling cried out, his voice cracking. I took the keys by habit. It wasn't malicious. And I didn't threaten his job. I was motivating him. It was banter. Locker room talk. Banter? I asked. Like the banter in the email to the chief of police. I want this gone by lunch. Is that banter too? Or is it a pattern? I picked up the email again. You see, Mr. Mayor, patterns are powerful evidence. You bully the chief. You bully your driver. You try to bully the court. It seems the only person Richard Sterling cares about is Richard Sterling. I demand a recess, Sterling shouted. I need to consult with my team. This is a political hit job. You orchestrated this. You brought the paramedic. You brought the driver. You are biased. I am biased in favor of the truth, I said calmly. And I didn't orchestrate anything. You did. You built this trap yourself, brick by brick, lie by lie. You parked the car. You sent the email. You made the threats. I am just the mirror, Mr. Sterling. And you don't like what you see. I looked at Officer Griggs. Officer, you are dismissed for now, but don't leave the building. The district attorney is going to want to speak with you about that banter. Griggs nodded, stood up, and walked out. He looked lighter, as if a weight had been lifted off his chest. He had told the truth, and the sky hadn't fallen. I turned back to Sterling. He looked small now. The arrogance was gone, replaced by the hollow look of a man realizing his career might be over. But I wasn't done. There was one final piece of the puzzle, the one record that started this whole unraveling. The email was damning. The testimony was crushing. But I had one more document on my desk. You mentioned earlier, I said, that you were meeting a confidential investor on the golf course. You admitted the coffee shop was personal, but you clung to the golf game as official business to justify the trip. You said business happens on the greens. Sterling nodded, seizing on the lifeline. Yes, exactly. The golf game was work. That justifies the route. That justifies the urgency. I thought you might say that, I said. So I had my clerk check the guest registry at the country club. It's public record for municipal officials, isn't it? Transparency laws and all that. I held up a printout. This is the tea time sheet for today. 9:30 a.m. Foursome. Mayor Sterling. Okay, but who are the other 3? The investors? I read the names. James Sterling, Michael Sterling, and guest. I looked at him. James and Michael. Your brothers? Sterling didn't answer. And guest? I asked. Is that the investor? Sterling stayed silent. Actually, I said, looking at the second page. The Club Pro made a note here. Lesson for Mayor's son, Junior. So the guest was your 4-year-old son. I dropped the paper. You weren't meeting investors. You were taking your brothers and your son golfing on a Tuesday morning in a city vehicle, using a police driver, blocking a fire station, and claiming it was official business. It was a family gathering, Sterling whispered. Family is important. Leo is important, I snapped. The boy in the ICU is important. Your family's leisure is not a state secret. It is not an emergency, and it is certainly not a defense. I sat back. The trial was effectively over. The facts were laid bare. The lie was exposed. The only thing left was the judgment. And for a man like Sterling, the judgment wasn't just about a fine. It was about the one thing he valued more than anything else, his power. Family leisure, I repeated, letting the words echo. You blocked a fire station, delayed a rescue, and risked a child's brain function for a family golf outing. And then you stood here under oath and called it economic revitalization. Sterling slumped into his chair. The fight had left him. The confident politician who had walked in expecting to bully a municipal judge was gone. In his place was a man watching his entire life unravel in real time. He looked at the gallery, searching for a friendly face, but found only cold stares. Even his assistants were looking at their shoes, distancing themselves from the blast radius. Your Honor, Sterling said, his voice barely a whisper. I have served this city for 8 years. I brought in the tech park. I renovated the waterfront. I have dedicated my life to public service. Doesn't that count for anything? Can't we look at the totality of my character rather than one bad morning? One bad morning? I asked, incredulous. Mr. Sterling, this wasn't a bad morning. This was a systemic abuse of power. You asked me to look at your character? I am looking at it, and it is terrifying. I picked up the stack of evidence, the ticket, the email, the paramedic's log, the tea time sheet. Character is not what you do when the cameras are rolling and you are cutting ribbons. Character is what you do when you think no one is watching. Character is forcing your driver to break the law because you are thirsty. Character is threatening a judge because you are embarrassed. Character is ignoring a dying child because you are late for a game. I will resign, Sterling blurted out. Is that what you want? I will step down. Just, please, let's seal the record. Let's handle this administratively. If this goes criminal, I lose my pension. I lose my law license. My family, you are bargaining again, I said, shaking my head. You still think this is a transaction. You think justice is something you can negotiate, like a zoning permit. But the courtroom is not a marketplace, Mr. Sterling, and I am not a vendor. I picked up my gavel. It felt heavy today. On the matter of the traffic citations, case number 4,492, obstruction of emergency services and illegal parking in a fire lane. You entered a plea of not guilty based on executive privilege in official businesses, based on the overwhelming evidence that you were, in fact, on a personal recreational trip, and that no such privilege exists for pastry runs. I find you guilty. Sterling flinched as the gavel struck. Bam. I am imposing the maximum fine allowed by statute, $500 for the obstruction, $250 for the parking violation, and court costs. But we both know that check means nothing to you. You probably spend more than that on your golf shoes. I leaned forward, locking eyes with him. So, let's talk about the things you can't pay your way out of. Mr. Sterling, during this hearing, you committed perjury by lying under oath about the nature of your trip. You committed obstruction of justice by ordering Chief of Police to destroy a valid citation. You committed witness intimidation by threatening Officer Griggs' employment in open court. And you attempted to extort a judicial officer by threatening my budget. Sterling stood up, his hands shaking. Now wait a minute, Boyd. You can't. You don't have jurisdiction over felonies. This is a traffic court. I am a judge of the state, I corrected him, my voice rising. And when felonies are committed in my presence, in my courtroom, I have not only the jurisdiction but the duty to act. You don't get to commit crimes here and then walk out because the sign on the door says traffic. I pressed the intercom again. Bailiff, secure the defendant. The sound of handcuffs unclipping from a belt was the loudest noise in the room. Sterling's eyes went wide. He looked at the exit, then at me. You're arresting the mayor? He gasped. Do you know what this will do to the city? The chaos, the media? The city will survive, I said. Democracies are built to survive bad leaders. What they cannot survive is a justice system that is afraid of them. If I let you walk out of here after what you did today, I am telling every citizen in this room that the law is a lie, that the rules are for the poor and the loopholes are for the powerful, and I will not have that on my conscience. The bailiff stepped forward. Mr. Mayor, please place your hands behind your back. This is insane, Sterling shouted, backing away. I have immunity. I am the elected official. You are a glorified traffic cop. I will have your robe. I will have this building turned into a parking lot Add disorderly conduct and resisting to the list. I said to the court reporter, "Officer, proceed." The bailiff, a man who had listened to every word of the paramedic's testimony, didn't hesitate. He spun the mayor around. Sterling struggled for a second, a flash of entitled rage before the cold steel of the cuffs clicked onto his wrists. Click, click. The image was striking. The navy blue suit, the flag pin, the handcuffs. "You have the right to remain silent," the bailiff recited. "Anything you say can and will be used against you." "I want my phone," Sterling screamed. "Call the governor. Call the press." "You can make your phone call from booking," I said. Just like everyone else, I looked down at his assistants. They were paralyzed. "And you too," I said to them. "If you helped draft that email to the chief, or if you knowingly facilitated the destruction of evidence, I suggest you hire your own counsel." Very quickly, they scrambled out of the room like rats fleeing a sinking ship. I turned back to Sterling, who was now being led toward the side door, the door that leads to the holding cells, not the exit. He looked back at me one last time. There was no arrogance left, only hate and fear. "This isn't over, Boyd," he spat. "For Leo, the boy in the ICU, it's just beginning," I replied. "Get him out of here." The door closed behind him. The courtroom let out a collective breath. It was as if a pressure valve had been released. People looked at each other, stunned. They had expected a slap on the wrist. They had expected the good old boys network to protect its own. Instead, they saw consequences. I looked at the clock, 10:15 a.m. The docket was still full. "Next case," I said, trying to return to normalcy, but the room didn't move. Then, slowly, from the back row, a single person started to clap, then another, then the whole room. It wasn't a thunderous ovation. It was a respectful, steady applause. It was the sound of people who had forgotten what accountability looked like, finally seeing it in action. I raised my hand to stop them. "Please, this is a court of law, not a theater. We have work to do." But as the next defendant walked up, a nervous teenager with a speeding ticket, I saw something different in his eyes. He didn't look at me with cynicism. He looked at me with respect. He knew that in this room, the game wasn't rigged. However, the story didn't end there. Richard Sterling was a man with deep pockets and deeper connections. I knew the phone calls would start within the hour. The governor, the party chairman, the media circus. But I had the records. I had the email. I had the tea time sheet. The gavel didn't end the war. It just started the siege. I called a recess at 10:30 a.m., barely 15 minutes after Sterling was led away in cuffs. My clerk, usually a stoic woman named Elena, looked pale as she handed me a stack of pink message slips. "Who is it?" I asked, walking into my chambers and unzipping my robe. It felt heavier than usual today. "Everyone," Elena whispered. "The governor's chief of staff, the district attorney, the city council president, and Chief Justice Harrison." I sighed. Harrison, the man who oversaw all municipal courts in the state, a political animal who hadn't seen the inside of a real courtroom in 10 years, preferring the steak dinners of the Capitol. "Patch Harrison through," I said, sitting down at my desk. I looked at the evidence file, the one record that had started it all. The email from Sterling. I opened my safe and placed the original hard copy inside, locking it with a heavy clank. The phone buzzed. I picked it up. "Judge Boyd," I said, "have you lost your mind?" Harrison's voice didn't even wait for a greeting. It was a roar. "I have the mayor's attorney on the other line threatening to sue the state for false imprisonment, kidnapping, and judicial misconduct." "You arrested a sitting mayor over a parking ticket?" "I arrested a citizen for perjury, obstruction, and witness intimidation," I replied, keeping my voice steady. "The parking ticket was just the catalyst. He threatened a witness in open court. Robert, he threatened me in open court." "I don't care if he threatened to burn down the building," Harrison shouted. "You don't cuff the mayor. You cite him, you file a complaint, you handle it through the Ethics Commission. You don't create a media circus. CNN is setting up vans outside your courthouse right now. Do you know what this does to the party, to the upcoming budget vote?" "And there it is," I said, leaning back. "The budget. Sterling threatened my funding too. Is that how it works now? We sell justice for HVAC repairs and new carpet? Don't get self-righteous with me, Boyd. You are a municipal judge, not the Supreme Court." You are punching above your weight class. I am ordering you to release him on his own recognizance immediately. Void the arrest order. We will claim it was a procedural misunderstanding, a heat of the moment error. I can't do that, I said. That wasn't a request, Harrison snapped. That was an administrative order from your superior. It's an illegal order, I countered. And if you want him released, you can come down here, put on a robe, and sign the release order yourself. Put your name on it, because I won't. I heard the testimony, Robert. I heard the paramedic talk about a 6-year-old boy with brain damage because Sterling wanted a latte. If I release him now, I am an accessory to that arrogance. There was silence on the line. Then, a cold, low voice. If you don't fix this by noon, Boyd, I will have you reassigned to night court in the basement of the impound lot. I will bury your career so deep you'll need a mining permit to find it. Do you understand? You are done. Then I'll enjoy my retirement, I said. But before you hang up, you should know something. The courtroom cameras were rolling. The audio was recording. And 5 minutes ago, I had my clerk upload the entire session to the secure cloud server of the State Attorney General's office. And I sent a backup copy to the local news station that is currently parking outside. I heard a sharp intake of breath on the other end. You leaked the footage. I preserved the public record. I corrected him. Transparency, Robert. It's what the voters love. If you fire me, or if you release him, that video will be the lead story on the 6 o'clock news. Chief Justice protects mayor, whom I med child. How does that headline look for your budget vote? Harrison slammed the phone down. The dial tone hummed in my ear. It was the sound of a bluff being called. I hung up and looked at the safe. They would come for the physical evidence next. They would try to say the email was forged or the timestamp was wrong, but they couldn't erase the digital footprint I had just created. There was a knock on the door. It was the district attorney, Marcus Thorne, a young, ambitious prosecutor who usually played it safe. He walked in, looking at the safe, then at me. The police are refusing to process him, Thorne said, wiping sweat from his forehead. The precinct commander is stalling. They have him in a holding cell, but they won't fingerprint him. They are waiting for orders from the governor. They are waiting to see who blinks first, I said. Sit down, Marcus. Thorne sat. Judge. Frank. You know they are going to come for you, right? They are going to dig through your past, your tax returns, your old rulings. They are going to try to paint you as unhinged. Let them dig, I said. But right now, I need to know one thing. Are you going to prosecute, or are you going to let the Good Old Boys Network sweep a dying child under the rug? Thorne looked at his hands. It's the mayor, Frank. He appoints the police commissioner. He controls my budget, too. He did, I said. But right now, he is just inmate number. Well, he doesn't have a number yet because the cops are scared. But he is a defendant, and you are the people's lawyer. Leo, the boy in the ICU, he is the people. Sarah Jenkins, she is the people. Sterling, he is just a man who forgot that he serves them. I slid the email Exhibit B across the desk toward Thorne. Not the original, but a copy. Read this again, I said. Read how he talks about his own police force. Handle your dogs. Kill the ticket. If you let him walk, Marcus, you aren't just failing the boy. You are telling every cop in this city that their badge means nothing compared to the mayor's golf game. Thorne read the email. I saw his jaw tighten. He was ambitious, yes. But he was also a former cop. The disrespect in those lines stung him. He called Officer Miller a dog, Thorne whispered. He thinks you are one too, I said. A lapdog. Thorne looked up. The fear was gone, replaced by a cold resolve. He picked up the paper. I'll draft the felony complaint. Obstruction, perjury, and I'm adding reckless endangerment in the first degree. Good, I said. But you need to move fast. Harrison is trying to find a judge to sign a release order. You need to get him arraigned on the felonies before they can ROAR him on the traffic violation. Thorne stood up. I'll do it. But Frank, watch your back. Leaving the courthouse tonight won't be safe. It never is, I smiled grimly. That's why I take the back exit. Thorne left. I was alone again. The silence of the chambers felt different now. It wasn't peaceful. It was the eye of the hurricane. I walked over to the window. Down below, on the street, the media vans were indeed setting up. And beyond them, a crowd was gathering. Not a mob. Citizens. They had heard. Word travels fast in a city this size. They were standing there, watching the courthouse, waiting to see if the building stood for something, or if it was just granite and lies. I went back to my desk. I had one more thing to check. The one record wasn't just the email. It was the timestamp on the paramedics log. 3 minutes and 40 seconds. That was the time the ambulance was delayed. I pulled up the hospital update on my computer. Leo was still in a coma. 3 minutes and 40 seconds. That was the difference between a scare and a tragedy, between a life and a memory. My computer pinged. A new email from the mayor's office. Subject, urgent, settlement offer. They were trying to buy me off, not with money, likely with a promotion, a seat on the appellate court, a quiet exit to a higher bench where I couldn't hurt them. I didn't open it. I hit print. This was going into the file too, the printer word to life, spitting out the email. Subject, settlement offer. I picked it up. It wasn't a settlement. It was a bribe wrapped in legalese. I walked out to the clerk's desk and handed it to Elena. File this under attempted bribery of a judicial official, I said, and make sure a copy goes to the FBI Public Corruption Unit. If they want to play federal games, let's invite the federals. By noon, the atmosphere in the courthouse had shifted. The fear was gone, replaced by a buzzing electric tension. The district attorney, Marcus Thorne, didn't blink. He filed the felony complaints at 11:45 a.m. Obstruction of justice, perjury, reckless endangerment, and thanks to my printer, attempted bribery. When they finally brought Sterling out for the official arraignment on the new charges, he wasn't the mayor anymore. He was just a man in a rumpled navy suit, sans tie, sans flag pin, his wrists shackled to his waist. He looked at the gallery, searching for his high-powered friends, his donors, his network. But the seats were empty. The good old boys hadn't come to save him. They had cut him loose the moment the video hit the internet. That is the thing about power built on fear. It evaporates the moment you stop being scary. Richard Sterling, I said, looking down at him one last time, you are charged with felonies that carry a maximum sentence of 15 years. Bail is set at $500,000 cash, and as a condition of release, you are barred from entering City Hall or contacting any city employee, including your former driver. Former? Sterling rasped. Officer Griggs resigned an hour ago, I told him, and he is now the star witness for the prosecution. You lost your shield, Mr. Sterling. Sterling was led away, not to a waiting limousine, but to a county transport van. The media caught every second of it. The image of the untouchable mayor being loaded into the back of a cage went viral before the van even left the curb. In the weeks that followed, the house of cards collapsed. Sterling resigned in disgrace 3 days later. His confidential investors publicly disavowed him. The city council, eager to distance themselves, voted unanimously to strip his pension to pay for Leo's medical bills. Speaking of Leo, he woke up. It was a long road. The hypoxia took its toll. He had to relearn how to walk. He had to relearn how to hold a spoon, but he was alive. His mother sent me a card a month later. No words, just a picture of Leo sitting in a wheelchair, giving a thumbs up. I keep that picture taped to my bench, right next to the Constitution. It reminds me why we do this. As for me, Chief Justice Harrison tried to make good on his threat. He launched an ethics inquiry. He tried to bury me in paperwork, but the public outcry was too loud. The Boyd video had become a symbol that no one is above the law. Harrison quietly dropped the inquiry when his own re-election poll numbers tanked. I still sit on this bench. I still hear traffic cases. Most days, it's just speeding tickets and expired registrations. But every once in a while, someone walks in wearing an expensive suit, carrying a heavy title, and looking at me with that familiar arrogance. They think their status matters here. They think their connections will save them. And when they do, I think of Richard Sterling. I think of the empty golf course. I think of the blocked fire station. And I think of the one record, the email, the log, the timestamp that brought a tyrant to his knees. Justice is not a machine. It is not a statute book. Justice is the refusal to look away when power tries to blind you. It is the courage to check the record, even when they tell you not to. Next case, I called out. The bailiff opened the door. The sun was setting outside, casting a long, golden light across the courtroom floor. It was just another Tuesday, but the air felt cleaner. The foundation felt stronger. And for the first time in a long time, the scales felt balanced.